Hey, how's it? So, I've successfully grown sunflowers 3 times, and I've taken this video like 20 times. So, yeah, I just want to walk you guys through the process, what I've done, what I've learned. So, let's get straight into it, please. So, the first time I grew sunflowers, I actually germinated them from seed. Apparently, sunflowers they don't take very well to transplanting. However, I succeeded. I think it's really they have a sensitive taproot, so if you damage that taproot, that's when I think they sort of kill over. So just watch out for that. When I transplanted them out, I think they had just developed their first set of true leaves, so you definitely want to catch it nice and early on. When I transplanted them out, I had already sorted out the garden bed. All I did for bed prep is I removed the lawn because I had to create the bed from scratch. I put in a bit of I did a top dressing of compost, and I did some trench composting. I found it works pretty well, and yeah, I pretty much let them grow. One thing that I did also notice, right, is as seedlings, I had a few casualties where birds and skinks charred them. So what I did to prevent that from happening again is I took 2 liter bottles. I use them as little mini greenhouses. I just hoid them over the top just to protect them. And I think it really works out quite nicely because it also gives a bit of additional heat and protection to the little seedlings, so they really enjoy that, what I found. And yeah, bro, about 3 months later I had some pretty good sunflowers. In that first season, or that very first time that I tried to grow sunflowers, we had a massive hailstorm that decimated the whole garden. And likewise with the sunflowers, they took a lot of damage, but fortunately they were able to sort of pull through. They survived. Then it was about a month after that, so a total growing time of 4 months, when I eventually harvested the heads. I took those heads, just cut them off on the top, on the stems, put them in the back room just to dry up, and yeah, they basically dried up over winter. Come spring, what I did is I then harvested all those seeds. I just put them over a towel. It's difficult to sort of get each of the individual seeds, so I basically just rubbed them, and because they had been dehydrated, it was very difficult to actually separate the actual seeds from the husk of the seed head, because when it dehydrates it contracts, so it all sort of like locks together. So I found that quite difficult and quite frustrating, to be honest. But yeah, that worked out nicely. And then I took those seeds and then I did my second sowing in spring of 2024. Put them in, I had phenomenal germination. I mean, I think I had like maybe 1 or 2 seeds that did not germinate. So I had so many germinated seedlings that I ended up transplanting some of them. So I dug them up and I put them in the front yard, and even then I did them when they were quite young, but some of them I took a little bit of a chance. I wanted to see. I transplanted them when they had quite a few sets of true leaves that had formed, and they actually did pretty well, which to my surprise, I didn't expect it. And yeah, then everything grew up. And again, with that second sowing, all I did was trench compost, top dressing of compost, and trench compost for nutrition. That's all I did. I also did have mulch on both occasions. And again, about 3 months after that, the sunflowers had grown nice and tall, about 2 meters tall. So most of them was like my height. And on the second occasion, the seed heads, what I did when I eventually harvested them, I did not wait for them to be completely dehydrated. What I did, I separated the harvest of seed heads into 2 sort of piles. The one pile, I harvested all those fresh seeds from those seed heads. It was nice and easy because being fresh, relatively fresh, it was much easier to separate the seeds from the husk, and because it hadn't dehydrated and contracted, they almost fell out quite readily. And the ones that didn't, because it's nice and malleable, nice and pliable, it's very easy to sort of push your fingers into places and separate those seeds, which is quite nice. Those seeds, I then put them in a fabric to dry up, and those same seeds are then used for my third sowing. which I'll talk about just now. The other half of the harvest, I have them currently hanging up in my back rooms, busy drying up. The reason is I want to find out what is the difference in viability from harvesting the seeds essentially at the same time, right? Chopping off the heads from the plants. Is there a difference when drying? Is there a difference in viability if you dry the seeds on the husk and off the husk? So that's why. And I'll say this: with the corn and the beans, right, using fresh seeds, I had phenomenal germination. However, doing that exact same thing with the sunflowers, I had less than stellar results. So I'm not sure if it's because maybe I harvested the seed heads themselves a little bit too early, or if it's because you need them to dry out before planting to have proper viability. So I'll find that out now in the upcoming season. So with this third sowing, so those fresh seeds, put them in the ground, didn't have very good germination, was very spotty. They seemed to struggle quite a bit, but they've eventually come up. I mean, it's now about 3 months after the fact, and they're starting to flower. Generally, I found, at least with this variety, it takes about 3 months after germination before they start developing seed heads, and then it's about a month after that when you can actually harvest the seeds, because you want to wait for the heads themselves to actually start to yellow. You want it to dry off completely, or not completely, but you want them to dry off and stuff. Okay, so on the third occasion, this current sowing, I used those fresh seeds, right? But I had very spotty germination. I'm not sure entirely yet if it's due to the fact that they weren't maybe fully mature. Maybe sunflower seeds are a variety that needs to be completely dehydrated to ensure good germination. I don't know. Or if it was due to pests. I do have that little field mouse running around, so I don't know if maybe that field mouse ate some of my seeds and if some of the birds ate my seeds. So that's something that I'll find out coming in the next season, when I can actually directly compare the seeds that I had dried off the husk and dried on the husk. So that'll be coming next season, which is really cool. But yeah, this third sowing, again, trench composting, but no compost. And I will say this, without that top dressing of compost, they're a lot shorter generally. I only have that one big boy there that's like 2.1 meters tall, but everything else, I mean, it's like at my eye level, so like 1.5 meters, that's my eye level, I think. But yeah, I'm surprised that just a little bit of a top dressing of compost made such a big difference. So yeah, but that's pretty much what I've done, right? I mean, trench compost, you can germinate from the seed trays themselves. Just make sure that they don't get that, you don't damage the taproot. Plant them direct, so put on a little greenhouse. They're actually really easy to grow. It's quite nice, especially for a beginner, somebody that doesn't really know what to do, like myself. Okay, so let's discuss some of the findings. Sunflowers, they like heat. They really like heat, and they really like sun. So you want to give them as much sun as possible and try and get them in the hottest parts of your your spring, your seasons. With the sun, sunflowers are heliotropic, so they follow the sun's direction as it sort of arcs over the sky, right? But it's not the heads themselves that follow the sun, it's the leaves. So you'll notice the leaves themselves, they follow the sun, sort of like solar panels, but the heads themselves, the skiff, they go in all fucking directions, okay? So it's not really the heads, it's more the foliage. But now, if you don't give them enough sun, they become very lanky. So like here, for example, here by the lapa, I've got these 3 sunflowers. You can see them there. They don't get as much sun as that sunflower bed over there. They get about maybe 5 hours of sun. It's actually a very poor spot for sunflowers, but you can see how lanky it is. The stem itself isn't very thick, it's quite thin. So the unfortunate thing is, if there's like a very strong wind, it might be prone to getting blown over. So it's just a consideration that you want to have. In terms of heat and water requirements, you can see how large, specifically this variety, how large these leaves are, and even the heads, and these are some of the smallest heads as well, but surprisingly enough they're quite drought tolerant that I've found. I haven't really needed to stress over these guys too much, not like some of the squash and stuff, which is quite surprising. But yeah, they're actually quite hardy. Just give them a lot of sun, so much sun, put them in the sunniest spot. They are called sunflowers after all. But yeah, bro. And in terms of the nutrition, I did mention the trench and compost. The compost amount wasn't too much. I wouldn't even say it's an inch. It's really maybe a shovelful equivalent per plant, and I think that's overestimating how much compost I've used. It's really not much. So they're also not the heaviest of feeders, which is also quite nice to know. I mean, you can really get by with just doing a bit of trench compost and you should be fine. So just in terms of the heads, right, so they have all these, I don't know if you can see on this little GoPro, but they have all these little flowers. This itself is not, it's not really the flower. It's, I can't remember the correct term, but all the flowers are actually inside here. This is what carries all the pollen. The bees, ladybirds, bumblebees, not so much like bumblebees, but they do come around a bit. They go crazy for everything. I mean, you can see, okay, there's a little hoverfly, but you can see the sort of shape in here. They really go nuts for this stuff. And then each of these flowers leads to an individual seed. So yeah, so because of that, they carry a lot of seeds and they tend to get quite heavy. So you'll see as the seeds themselves mature, as they get a little bit heavier, the heads themselves, they tend to droop down towards the ground. And if you think about it, it sort of makes sense, because then as the husk will dry out, the seeds themselves will fall down and then they'll self-germinate and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't really know what I'm mentioning. I think it's just kind of interesting. And with the seeds, once they start maturing up, not even when they're fully matured, just as they start maturing, you'll notice that birds go nuts for it. Absolutely mental. So there's a few things that I've tried to do to try and protect the seeds themselves. I've tried putting like strips of plastic on the leaves, on the stalks, just to create some movement, similar to what I did with the corn. I did not find that very effective. I also tried using strips of what's that stuff called, aluminium foil, same as with the corn, did not work. What I found worked is they stopped attacking my sunflowers once the corn had developed. So they prefer the corn over the sunflowers, which is kind of counterintuitive, because I've heard people plant sunflowers to get them away from the corn. I had the exact opposite reaction, where they went after the corn instead of the sunflowers. So yeah, what I also did try to do is, in the first season, I covered the entire head with a plastic bag. The problem with that is then you get a lot of moisture buildup on the inside without any airflow, so there's like a mold buildup. So that's actually not what you want. It's not ideal. So what I want to try in the next season, for what I want to protect, is I want to get some of those, what is this? It's like a, not a Hessian bag, but it's like a very porous, perforated packet that you get like squash and stuff in. I want to try and use those, because then you'll have enough airflow in there. Then you shouldn't really have too many birds attacking you. You should at least be able to save something. That's something that I want to try. I have what looks like powdery mildew on some of these stems, and what's quite interesting is this is by far the worst I've had it out of all of the sowings that I've done. This season, especially this latter half of summer, has been very wet. It's been much wetter than normal, so that is quite interesting. And I do have them spaced a little bit closer than what I normally do. So now I have them about 500 mils apart, placed in a sort of triangle formation. So 500 mils, 500 mils, 500 mils. That's sort of the basic effect. And because it's so dense, I don't think there's really enough airflow coming through, especially with this wet season that we have. So that's why I'm getting a lot of powdery mildew. Before I had it, I think it was about 600 mils, also in a triangular fashion, and I didn't have nearly this much powdery mildew. So it's quite interesting just how much 100 mils makes a difference. Obviously in such a wet climate currently. Sort of the last thing I just want to quickly discuss is the allelopathic nature of sunflowers. Sunflowers are known to be allelopathic, meaning they will send out not toxins but chemicals that inhibits the germination of seeds and other plants in the surrounding area. In all honesty, despite the fact that I've grown them in the same bed 3 times now, I have not really had that issue. I mean, I have sweet alyssum here, I've got some marigolds over there too. I also have radishes and turnips and some other stuff that I'm busy growing over here, and I haven't really struggled with germination. So I think with the whole allelopathic nature of sunflowers, I think it really takes a while for it to maybe build up. And it's also worth noting that in the already starting with the second sowing and this current third sowing, there was already decaying sunflower plant matter in the soil due to the first and then obviously then the second sowing of sunflowers. So it's not just that I've grown the sunflowers here, but I've also chopped and dropped that same sunflower material into the soil. So I would have really thought that if the allelopathic nature of sunflowers is super harmful to other organisms, then it would have surely shown itself by now. With 3 sowings in 2 seasons actually, because sowing 2 and 3 is in the same season. I really would have expected to see something by now, so I don't think it's too much of an issue. Perhaps if you have like very sensitive crops, it might be the case, but personally I haven't seen any real issue. So in terms of harvesting, the very first set of sunflowers that I harvested, I didn't actually take note of how much I harvested. I would estimate it to be between 500 grams and a kilogram of seed, but I'm not really sure. The half that I had removed from the seed husks, that came to a kilogram. The second half, because I had some very large seed heads on the second sowing, is very surprising. But the second half that I currently have growing in the back rooms, I haven't weighed them, but I would assume that the second half would be around about a kilogram. So the second sowing total harvest of seeds is estimated to be about 2 kilograms. It's 2 kilograms of seed, wet weight by the way, not dry weight. This third sowing, because I have half as many plants, it will then come to about a kilogram. So then this current second season with the second and third sowing of sunflowers, I should have a total harvest this season of about 3 kilograms of wet weight dried, or 3 kilograms wet weight of sunflower seed. Just kind of interesting. And then just with regards to the uses of those sunflowers, obviously you can don't worry about protecting the seed heads and just feed the birds and stuff. Like I said, the birds love it. Alternatively, you can harvest those seeds and then put them into your bird feeders and stuff. Obviously you can also retain some of those seeds, some of the biggest seeds, and then try and cultivate some larger sunflowers, and then obviously you can eat them. For eating them, I've been doing a bit of research into how people commercially, how they harvest the seeds and how they de-shell the seeds. There's a little machine that I want to try and build coming into the next season when I have some bucks, but essentially it's just a motor with a funnel. As you drop the seeds in, it hits onto a fan, splits it open with that fan, then it blows the empty husk away and then the seed drops. The idea is that the seeds themselves are a lot heavier than the actual husk, the seed shell, so it separates through wind action like that. So it's something that I want to experiment with. So what am I doing going forward? So to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I have been doing has yielded quite a bit of success. What I will end up doing going forward, I will still be utilizing part of this bed, but I do want to move them. Just going forward, it's more of an ornamental feature now going forward in the garden. But I want to make sure that when I do move them, they have enough sun so that they don't get lanky like that one guy there by the water. And in addition to the trench composting, I'm going to continue then doing the light top dressing, because there's definitely a bit of a height difference due to that on this current third sowing. And I want to try and make them sort of self-seed, not really protect them from the birds, let the birds chow whatever they want, and whatever falls down on the ground will then self-seed and sort of perennialize this. I think that'll be a fun experiment. And then I did mention that little contraption that I want to build for actually harvesting and de-shelling the seeds. I definitely want to experiment with that. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's not really much that'll change. Yeah, definitely recommend. So, final thoughts and conclusions. Sunflowers are really easy to grow, especially for a beginner. It's quite nice. They are able to be transplanted either from 6 cells or even from the ground to other areas. Just make sure that you catch them nice and early. They're quite drought tolerant. They accept heat very well. They want as much sun as you can give them. So yeah, very, very positive growing experience. Definitely recommend. So yeah, so if you guys enjoy my content and hearing me ramble on about random gardening stuff, I suggest you check out my playlist. It basically just goes over my experiences and my journey growing.